Welcome to Thriving Tribesmen. My name is Kuri, your host, and I'm excited to be making this episode. 3 mistakes you need to avoid when you're talking about a sexless relationship. Usually when people bring this up, they always bring it up from this frame of mind. They bring it up from this victim mindset, which is we haven't had sex for a while, and therefore you've rejected me several times. And because of the rejection, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling unwanted, I'm feeling unloved. So therefore, I want us to resolve this situation. And usually when you bring it from this perspective, it's a victim mindset that triggers her to see herself as a victim. Because all of a sudden, it's almost accusatory when you put it that way. So she feels like, okay, I'm causing the person that I call my husband, the one that I love, essentially you're saying you're doing bad at your job. So therefore, she now digs deep internally and says, okay, what are the bad things that he's doing that is making me feel bad or making me feel depressed? So then she goes through her own list of what's going on. So becomes this, who is the most victim in this situation in order to win? And that's one path it goes down whenever you have this conversation. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because you had this before where you're really trying to pour out your feelings with this, and then all of a sudden you end up becoming the bad guy. And generally the other place where it goes is that the person dismisses what you're saying. So, okay, why are you making sex such a big deal? In fact, right now I'm already struggling with the children, I'm struggling with work, I'm struggling to have to deal with everything that's going around the house. Why are you being so selfish with this? So why is it so making it such an important deal? It's not so important. So again, there's this dismissive side of things where, again, she complete lack of empathy of what's going on. And this is a common theme when you see this type of interactions, because when it comes to a relationship and you are the leader, it's similar to in the way this is how sometimes your wife sees it. It's she takes a motherly frame, again, when you come with those sort of complaints, because you are not coming up with solutions. And when you speak in a way of, this is what's going on, I want you to, you're basically trying to say, I'm giving you leadership to try and fix this. And therefore, this is one of the reasons why it doesn't work. So again, I could pretty much stop the episode here, but I'm just going to go down the other 3 mistakes that most people make, because that's not actually the mistake. The first one is actually trying to resolve everything in one conversation. So most people sort of build this up into something that is so dramatic. So, I mean, I've heard of people writing letters, I've heard of people writing notes and sitting that person down and trying to list all these terrible things that are happening. And generally what that does is it really puts so much pressure into the conversation, which makes it very difficult to resolve anything, because they're going to try and find reasons to leave that conversation. So therefore, whenever you do that, and this is where most people go, they put so much pressure into that one conversation because they want to leave. Generally, in fact, 9 times out of 10, she's going to start blaming you and shaming you in order for you to get destabilized in your conversation, and then she ducks out. So that's a sort of one of the mechanisms that they will use to get out of the conversation. One of the mechanisms that use to wiggle out of the conversation. And then again, you find yourself, because you've put so much pressure into this conversation, and none of the conversations are going to be lack of discomfort, but you can manage that to the point where it's easier for that person to go through that conversation, so you can actually get good feedback, or at least good momentum to go a specific direction. And now I'll go more about the solution as we go along. So that's the first one. So it's really trying to build up this one conversation into the thing that's going to change the relationship. Don't do that. It's going to take several amount of conversations to actually change a sexless relationship. In fact, it's taken you many years for you to get up to this point where you're sexless. So therefore, it's going to take several conversations and a few months, probably a few years, to actually get to the point where you want to. And it's going to lead you, it's going to be a series of conversations that will do that. So again, you can't do that in one conversation. That's the first one. The second one is outcome dependency. So you're getting in with this conversation with this expectation to actually get an outcome. So I'm going to list down all these things that are terrible within a relationship, and I expect you to actually agree with me, and then for it to be smooth sailing, and then we just go and have high frequency sex. Generally, when you do that, again, same as first point, you're putting pressure on that person to make a decision. And some of those decisions are very difficult to make because there is reasons why she's failing to feel comfortable around you sexually. And therefore, you're forcing them to try and confront those things without actually laying the path for them to start trying to confront them and to get better at it and getting more comfortable around the sex. So you're almost shoving them into a very uncomfortable situation, and therefore they just want to wiggle out of it. And again, just a side note, when you put so much pressure in those conversations to the point where there is no room for them to actually start growing, or at least they don't have the tools to start growing, it forces them to resent going back to those conversations. But if you put them in that difficult situation, but then you give them the tools to actually start working their way out, what that does is that they're more comfortable to come back to that conversation. Therefore, again, if it's going to take you 100 conversations to get to the place where you want, they're more likely to get to the 100 conversations when they have better system of getting there rather than when it's pressure. What that does is just force them to give up at some point and say, you know what, I can't handle this anymore because it's just too much for me. So again, outcome dependency is that one where you have got this feeling of wanting a result because of the conversation. And it's almost aligned to the trying to fix it in one conversation, but it's more aligned to it, but it's not the same. The only difference with it is that when you are expecting an outcome, it doesn't become a collaborative conversation. It's now you telling that person, which is different, because then when they resist moving forward, sometimes they will actually put up a complaint to actually moving forward, something that you can actually then collaboratively deal with, and it makes you fluid to be actually to be able to call audibles in terms of how you're going to resolve it. Because if you've got one set track that you're going to run, and that's the only track that you're running, it becomes very difficult to get to a point where you can get a resolution. Again, resolution is not the right word. It's a place where I spoke to a client recently. I said calling it a signal. You're not getting a signal because, again, when I say the outcome, you should be also prepared for a negative outcome. In fact, the best outcome is for you to actually present the opportunity for change. And if that person doesn't take that opportunity to change, that's okay, because it's just an opportunity. It's not the decision maker. It's not the thing that's going to cause. In fact, if it's going to take you 100 conversations to get to where you will need, that's just one opportunity for that conversation for her to feel that comfort, to feel a bit of discomfort, and then for you guys to start working through what's causing that discomfort. So again, outcome dependency becomes very interesting. That you're not looking for a yes or a no. You're just looking for a reaction, and that is much better place to be. And while you're looking for your reaction, number 3 is your state. So you have to control your state in terms of that. While she might give you a negative reaction, you have to be okay with getting a negative reaction, and neither should be extremely excited when you get a good reaction. You have to be neutral state, which communicates leadership, because it means that you're not quite there. You're not swayed emotionally, because again, if she puts up resistance because she doesn't know where she's going, and you falter because of it, she cannot trust you to then take you to the place where it's going to be safe. So this is why a neutral state becomes a very important. That she's going to trust. For her to trust your leadership, she has to trust that when you get a negative reaction, when you're having those conversations, you are not going to implode. And when you don't implode and you stay strong and resilient, it builds trust for you to, when you have the next conversation, that you can actually lead to the right direction where you need to go. So those are the three things. And in terms of solution, I was speaking to a client and he told me a really amazing story. I'm going to try and make it as short as possible since we've already hit 10 minutes. But I wrote some notes, and that's the reason why this podcast episode is a bit longer. But it's longer as well because I think it's going to give you immense value in terms of changing your sexless relationship and really approaching these conversations in a much more productive way. But he was telling me that on his honeymoon, him and his wife, they went to, I forgot the place in Hawaii, but it's a really amazing place, he was saying. And they said they went out for one of the trails to go and have a look, and they went through a forest, and they end up at this edge where it was just beautiful, the ocean, they were just taking it all in. And you can imagine, this is their honeymoon, and they're seeing this beautiful place. And I would imagine when they were on this cliff looking at the ocean, it was just this sense of, we're here, we're happy, we've just got married, and they had so much hopes and dreams about what the future might look like, and excited about the adventure, and really not knowing what will happen. And you're saying that as they were going through this, they took in all as much as they can in terms of the scenery and just the fresh air, and really enjoying this moment. And I would imagine that they were feeling this sense of love and achievement because they had to trek over to this place. And when it was now time to go home, it was, they had to walk back, and they started realizing that they didn't really keep track of where they were walking. So it was now time to go back. And as always, the time when they were doing this, it wasn't the time that we were at, where we've got smartphones where you can use tracking and so on. So all of a sudden they find themselves in the woods, and they're trying to find this, and they were completely lost. And you know what it's like when in a relationship where one moment things were on a honeymoon, you had high frequency sex, everything was amazing, you had so much optimism about your relationship and where it was going to go, and all of a sudden you find yourself now in the woods and nothing makes sense. Like, where is my relationship that I had a few years ago, or when we started dating? Why is it that it's not the same? And you can imagine the contrast of feelings that they had from being on the cliff and now just having this view of trees and being surrounded by trees. And this gentleman was saying to me that it's only when he realized that there were some ribbons put on the trees that these were signals for the hunting trails. So they decided, if I see a ribbon, I'll stand by the place, and then one of us will go around looking for another tree with a similar ribbon. So initially he stood there, and then his wife went around looking at all the other trees that were surrounding to see if there was a ribbon. And when she found one, it gave him a direction of where they needed to go. So they would go to that next one, and then the other person would go and then try and figure out. And this is what the conversation should be like. So your conversation isn't going to be dealt with one conversation, but it's going to be a case where you're working together to get to the place where you're out of the bushes. In fact, right now, a lot of you guys are in the bushes, and instead of looking for those signals to actually find the track to go, you're trying to force yourself to catapult to somewhere where you don't even know where it's going. So it's not even a place that's you're looking out for yourself. You're trying to find your own way without even trying to figure out what's the signal, that what's the dating point, what's that starting point where we need to start, and then what's that next step that we need to take together. And really, it's you being able to establish that, and you can establish that. Definitely, especially one of the last points when I was saying keeping a neutral state, some of the implosion that you've been doing in the relationship has caused some distrust. So especially when you come up to the conversations, it makes it very difficult for you to trust you to take this to the next level, because again, you're unsure of where you're going. So again, he was telling me about the story, and then you're saying about that they end up figuring a way out of this, and it was out of teamwork. And while all that was happening, it wasn't short of its own challenges. The fact that at some point there was a point when they couldn't find the ribbon at the time, and when they couldn't find that ribbon, there was a meltdown from him, and she had to console him, and vice versa. And there'll be challenges when you're having these conversations. Like I said, if you go in there expecting for your entire relationship to change out of one conversations, you're bound for doom. But you just had to follow the process where you taking it step by step, finding ribbon by ribbon, datum point by datum point, and you have to look at it from that perspective. So in this case, you're looking at how do I build sexual comfort? And again, within the comfort, how do I build rapport around that? How do I build qualification around that? There's certain things that now you have to do within comfort that is going to make it successful so you can have high frequency. So again, it's those little points that you make building over a period of time. So again, you're saying that they continue doing this until they actually found a place, and then they were free from all of this. And your freedom from this sexless relationship is going to be reliant on how you deal with these conversations. These conversations are powerful if you have the right tools. So I'm going to invite you to come and get our selection blueprint, and I'm going to include some of the tips on how you actually have these conversations. So go to Thriving_Tribesmen at Instagram, and you'll be able to get some tools for you to actually start having these conversations so they can be effective. And you're probably wondering, what's the catch? Why are you giving us for free? This is how we get clients. So I give you the tools that you need to actually start getting momentum in your relationship. And when you come back and we start trying to see how that's worked, I'll be prepared to give you another strategy for your relationship so it actually gets you results. And while I'm giving you that second strategy session, if you qualify, you get the opportunity to be join Reignited Men. If not, maybe you'll be not the right time for both of us, but you might get that opportunity to be invited to come and join Reignited Men. And if you do and you want to, that's okay. If you don't want to, that's okay as well. So again, it's all free content. It's free advice. It's free strategy session, and completely free. So you could literally get the blueprint, get stuff sorted, start getting that momentum. And if you're okay with just that momentum, that's perfectly fine for us. At least we'll be happy that would have helped you. So thank you very much. It's a longer episode than I normally do, but I think this was going to be an important episode for you guys, because I think this week I've been focusing more on how to talk about the relationship, how to think about talking about it. And I think I might continue on this vein, because I could literally talk for the next month about the actual talk itself. It's that important, and it's that overlooked that most people don't really realize that the mistakes that they're making is actually compounding the sexless relationship. The approach to it is compounding the sexless relationship. So hopefully that stops now because you've listened to this. So thank you very much. I'll be seeing you guys soon. Take care.